This drip all on my body, soaking wet the sunny. Looking like a walking lick, yeah, you can tell I'm grinding. Rolling back was full of loud, I can't hear nobody. Disrespect and get laid down.
What's up, fuckers? Episode 32 of the Beer Latte Show. I'm Steve.
I'm Nick.
Danielle.
And today we have Marianne with the podcast Walking the Shadowlands. Marianne, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, thanks for joining us all the way from New Zealand. So I'm just going to jump right into it. You've had UFO sightings or experiences?
Yes, I've had UFO encounters and star people encounters my entire life. I'm 64 now, and I've had experiences since I was a little child.
Oh, wow.
How young?
My earliest memory I have was about 18 months old. That's not actually a memory of the beings. What it was in New Zealand was a fairly safe country because we're so geographically isolated where I live. So we never used to lock our doors or windows when I was a kid, because it was safe back then, and well, safer than it is now anyway. And my parents had put me to bed. It was nighttime, and the memory that I have is being outside in the dark crying because I didn't know where my parents were and I couldn't get into the house. My parents could hear me crying, but they didn't know where I was. They couldn't find me. They had put me to bed in my cot and they found me outside. The doors were shut. The windows were shut. They had no idea how I got outside.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
For them it was. Well, for me it was. I remember being scared because I was outside in the dark. But that's all that I remember. But that's a very clear memory. Then my next actual memory is when I was between 2 and 3 years old. My father used to be what is called in New Zealand a share milker. So we worked on a farm, and in those days, we called living in the country out in the wops. So we used to live out in the wops, which is a bit different to how it is in the States, because New Zealand's a much smaller country, but there were very few street lights, and the farm gates were always shut. You had to shut the gates and open them and shut them so the cattle wouldn't get out, the cows or the sheep. And we were coming home from town one evening. There was my mother and father in the car, my half-sister and my older sister. Both of them were older than me. And we were followed by this light, followed us down the dark road, and we just assumed it was another car because it was about car level on the road. And it was unusual to see other traffic because we were so far out in the country. Anyway, we turned off the road to go into the farm where we were living at that time, and the light that was behind the car rose vertically and flew across the top of the car. And my parents thought it had gone. Anyway, we got to the gate, and all of a sudden this light, which was above us, above the car at this stage, put down this beam of light that completely surrounded the car. White, bright light, like you see in the movies. This beam of white, bright light just completely surrounded the car. And I remember everybody was terrified. My sisters were crying. My mum and dad were arguing about who was going to get out of the car and unlock the gate so that they could get home to safety. I wasn't scared at all. I was really excited because I knew it was my friends. And I could tell, I just felt them. Anyway, in this bright light, there were these figures that were moving around in the light. You couldn't make out. They were humanoid, but you couldn't make them out. You could just see the forms moving in this bright light. And that's all I remember of that incident.
But you knew that they were familiar?
The energies that I felt from them were very familiar, yeah.
That's crazy at such a young age.
Yeah, but the thing is, my mum and dad, until they died, remembered that incident. They remember the light following the car. They remember the light around the car, but they don't remember anything else. They don't remember seeing beings moving around in the light.
Was there any sound?
I don't recall sound. I just recall the bright light and the beings moving. There are other experiences I had when I was older where there was sound involved. Like there was one that happened, gosh, I can't remember what age I was. I was at primary school, so maybe between, possibly between 4 and 6 years old. I was very young. I'd only just started school. So I was quite young, and I was home for some reason. I'm not sure why I was home that particular day, but we used to live in a semi-industrial area. My father used to have a scrap metal business, and our home was on the property. This was later on, obviously, and we lived in a town called Palmerston North in the North Island. And opposite our house that we lived at was an ice cream factory called Frosty Jack. And in those days, it's not, of course, acceptable these days. In those days, they used to defrost their freezers every Friday. So I knew it was a Friday, and they'd put the ice on the street to melt. So this particular day, I was outside playing, and I had some toys on a wooden box, and they started to rattle. And I didn't think anything about it. I thought it was just an earthquake because, New Zealand, we get earthquakes from time to time. And all the workers were out on their morning tea breaks. So it was about 10 o'clock. They were having their cup of tea. And I used to like watching the workers because every now and then one of them would cross the road and on the odd occasion give me an ice block. Kids, they did things like that for us. So I used to like talking to them because I always hoped that I'd get another ice block from them. But anyway, in this day, they were sitting there and they were all talking, having their cup of tea, and all of a sudden I could hear this high-pitched sound, really, really high-pitched buzzing, and it actually hurt my ears because I had burst my eardrum.
Oh.
And it was healing, and so it really, really hurt my ears, really high-pitched, and I didn't know where it was coming from. And then all the workers on the other side of the road got really animated, and they were all pointing at the sky, and I turned to look at what they were pointing at. And as I did that, I saw a classic saucer-shaped UFO descend down above our house. I don't know how high it was in the sky. It was low enough that I could see it very clearly and the lights rotating around it. And at this stage, my mum had become very aware of the noise, and she came outside to see what the noise was about because it was very unusual. And she also saw the UFO. And it came down. It was quite low. The sound was, it's really hard to explain. It's like a whooshing, high-pitched, really, really unusual. And it was there for, I don't know how long it was there for. And I didn't recall, some things happened, but I didn't recall those until many years later. But at this stage, it was there for, I don't know how long, and then it just shot up vertically and disappeared. And everybody stood around talking about it for a while, and then they had to go back to work, and that was that. But that was the first time that I recall having sound when I was seeing a UFO.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, you've had more experience than most, and at this point, you're only somewhere between 4 and 6 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wonder if do you think they're like visiting you, or you just happen to be seeing them?
It's been my experience that quite often people that are visited, contacted by star people, as I call them, that their families are followed through generations for a specific reason. So there's often, they often follow family lines. My father told me of an experience that he had when he was in the war, in the Second World War, and he was in Egypt. And his platoon, or some of his mates, in his platoon, and he were watching this huge, he called it a mothership. He said it was absolutely massive in the sky, and it was all these little ships were coming out of it. He said they looked like fireworks coming out of this mothership.
Right out in the desert?
In the desert, yeah, in Egypt. So quite often there's a familial history of seeing or having encounters.
I don't even know what I would do if I saw ships coming out of a ship in the sky.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, they were in a pretty traumatic situation anyway, being in the Second World War, and away from our home country. So, yeah, it certainly made an impression on him.
Did he ever talk about it? Like, does he think perhaps they were there maybe just as, a buffer just in case anything went wrong? Like, are they watching us?
I don't think he gave it that much thought. He had so much else going on but it impressed him enough that he remembered it, because obviously it's not something you would see every day, and it wasn't a military aircraft, which they were used to seeing.
Wow.
Yeah, that's I don't think I've ever heard that one before. Someone seeing like a mothership, basically.
No, I've heard.
Yeah, those are the words he used, a mothership.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else to call it besides that.
Yeah.
All right, so now you're somewhere between 4 and 6, having more experiences than like everybody else out there. So you had more past that?
Yes, I've had more. And actually, there's a follow-on to that last experience. The day after we saw that UFO, we had a Men in Black encounter.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, like in your town?
At our house.
Oh.
They came to our house. Yeah. They, as a kid, well, I don't know how it is in the States, but, as kids, we used to, if somebody knocked at the door, we would run to answer it. We like to be the first to answer it, to see who was there. It was a kid thing, because you're all excited.
Yeah.
Anyway, the following morning, there was a knock on the door, and I ran to answer it. I was the first one to answer it. And my mum was right behind me. I just beat her to the door. And standing on the doorstep, there were two men. And there was a third one out on the street. Now, the street was only maybe 5 or 6 feet away from the front door. It wasn't very far away. So in the street was this really fancy black sedan that had a running board on it. So we're talking in the early 60s. So, that was quite a fancy car with a running board. And there were 3 men. One guy was standing in the car, standing beside the car with one foot on the running board. They all had suits and hats on. They all had sunglasses on. They were all very pale-skinned. And the two at the door, one was standing facing my mother and I. The other was side on at the bottom of the steps. He wasn't on the steps. So this guy, the one that was facing, my mum got such a bad feeling of these guys. As soon as she saw them, she started shaking, actually physically shaking. Of course, my mum would have only been in her 20s, so it was pretty intimidating for her. These guys gave off quite an intimidating vibe, and that was, I believe, intentional. Anyway, she put me behind her, and I could feel her hand shaking as she held me, because I wanted to see what was going on. I was a nosy kid. Anyway, they pretty much told Mum that she wouldn't remember anything that she saw yesterday. She wouldn't talk about it to anybody if she knew what was good for her and her family. So they pretty much, it was intimidation. And then the guy that was standing at the bottom of the steps said, "What about the kid?" And the guy facing my mum says to him, "Oh, she's too young, she won't remember it." And well, nobody, even at that age, ever told me what I could or could not remember or what I could or could not talk about. And so I deliberately set in my mind that I would never forget this, and I would talk about it every opportunity that I got. And so that's what I did. And so the men left. I actually, Mum slammed the door on them, and then she went down and sat down and lit up a cigarette, and she was shaking, just shaking. I've never seen my mum that scared. And anyway, time went on, and we never talked about it, although I never forgot about it, and I did talk about it. If the subject ever came up about, like Men in Black, this is obviously before the movies and before it became mainstream. And my mum completely forgot about it until just before I went to live in the States in 2000, around about then. I just went for a visit before I left, and we were talking about old experiences and UFOs. And I said, Mum, do you remember that time the Men in Black came to our house? And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, do you remember the UFO that was over our house? And she said, yeah, I remember it. And then we talked a bit more, and then she suddenly remembered the experience. And she said, oh my God, I completely forgot. How could I have forgotten that? And then she recounted for me what she recalled of it, which was pretty much what I remembered.
It's fascinating. I wonder if they hit everybody's house in that area, or was it just yours?
Well, ours was the only house there, but I often wonder if they went to the workers across the factory who saw as well. I don't know. I've got no way of knowing that, but yeah.
Yeah, if they did, they all kept quiet, I guess.
Yeah.
They're good listeners.
Well,
not you.
Well, it was pretty intimidating.
Well, I imagine so. I mean, especially, just like three of them showing up, and you don't know what they're capable of.
Exactly. And in New Zealand, we don't dress like that. New Zealand's a very casual country. Even back in the 60s, it was very casual. So to see somebody dressed up in suits and ties and hats and sunglasses, that's a big thing.
Right. Like here in America at that time frame, I guess a lot of people, or often they would have had maybe like women with house dresses or regular dresses. Guys kind of wore that often, I think.
It was a hippie movement in the 60s.
Well, not everyone was a hippie.
No, I know. I'm just trying to say everything was pretty casual.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
everything was
not
casual.
Like,
not compared.
Not like New Zealand. New
Right.
Zealand's
but it's still
much
like,
different.
isn't it so weird that like,
Why are they white? Why are they so pale skinned? That's what
I
freaks
have
me
no
out.
idea.
Did they look
Yeah,
like human? Like they looked normal, right?
Well, you couldn't tell they weren't human. I mean, they had a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. Couldn't see their eyes because they had sunglasses on.
I just wonder
why they always dress like that, like since forever.
I mean, they didn't define themselves as any kind of organization or anything. They just made themselves known, right? And intimidated you in a way.
Yeah, that's all they did. Yeah, they didn't identify themselves, as far as I can recall, as any organization.
Huh.
Yeah, people just know.
Yeah, I guess. Well, now in
Like,
hindsight,
why black? Why are they just like men in blue, men in brown, just men,
They're black
Just
suits,
men.
black
casual men scaring people.
They wouldn't be so intimidating if they didn't.
Yeah, it must be the sunglasses and like the hat. You see that, and you're like, oh shit.
It's like death knocking on your door.
Yeah.
And now they're gonna knock on our door. Thank you, Marianne. Super excited for that.
I don't know that they're seeing that. Oh, they still are seeing. I actually did an episode on the Men in Black some time ago, and there was a guy who worked at a hotel in the Niagara Falls who saw a UFO, and it was only, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. Could be longer because time slips away, but he saw a UFO, and then they had a Men in Black encounter that was recorded on the hotel security video. It did the rounds on all the. It's on YouTube if you want to look it up.
Oh wow! I have to
It
take
showed
a peek.
two guys coming into the hotel looking for him, 2 men in black suits, black hats, and they intimidated the hotel staff. He quit not long after that and moved away.
I would too.
Or was taken
Yeah.
away.
No, he definitely moved away.
All right, so now you're still 6. You were scared. Well, you weren't scared because you're a badass. And you were like, this is cool. I'm telling everybody. Saw the Men in Black.
Mom was terrified.
I was a stubborn kid, you know. It's done me well over the years.
So then you move on to your next encounter, which is still crazy, but keep going. So like roughly when does your next encounter?
Well, from there, things are kind of patchy. I have memories. I don't know what ages I was, but I have these snippets of memories over the years, like as a child, being in this classroom setting. I call it a classroom. It was a learning environment with a group of other kids all around about my age, boys and girls, learning things on a ship, being taught stuff, being taught the power of vibration and sound and intent, how to move things with my mind, which I can't do here, just so you know.
Wait, you were
but
learning
that's
this
what-
on a ship?
I was learning this on a ship, yeah.
And how did this come about? Sorry to sidetrack you, but like I'm a little. So you were just like, you found something to learn, or you were sent off from your parents?
No, they came and got me, took me on a ship, taught me the stuff, returned me home.
Oh, somebody. So a star person or something
Star
like that
people, yeah,
came
star
and
people,
took you.
yeah.
Okay, now I caught
Yeah,
back
yeah.
up. Sorry. So you were in this learning environment, and they were teaching you or attempting to teach you how to move stuff with your mind.
And the power
Yeah,
of vibration. That's
most
pretty cool.
the importance of vibration and sound and frequency and the power of intent,
Wow. That's really
amongst
neat.
other things. And I think because of what they taught me, it helped open up my abilities to interact with beings in other dimensions, like spirit and stuff like that. It's certainly from an early age, I have been very aware that there are many more realities than the one that we are currently aware of here.
Can I ask, do you think that, I mean, could you call the star people the same as a spirit, or
No.
no?
Star people, you can call them ET. I call them star people because that's what they are to me. They're from the stars and the people. I've always seen them as people regardless of the form that they take. And I've never, ever been concerned about labeling what race or species they belong to. To me, they are just star people, and they're the ones that I have had dealings with have been my friends my entire life. So they've been a part of my reality as long as I can remember, pretty much. Yeah, but they're not the same as ghosts, no. Although there are some star people that do not have physical bodies as some do. They are beings they resonate at a much higher frequency, and so their bodies are more translucent. They're like light, if you like. So they could be sort of seen to be ghost-like, but they're not. It's not the same thing.
More of just an energy.
Yes, yeah.
Wow, this is wild. All in the same group of familiar people.
Yes.
Fascinating. I'm fascinated that at such a young age, I mean, we're still talking, you're quite young, you're thinking, right?
Yeah.
At such a young age, you're learning about the power of vibration and stuff like that. I mean, I haven't even learned about that until just, I don't know, the last 10 years. That's crazy. And you utilize this most of your life?
Not on a conscious level, no.
Oh, okay.
A lot of it I didn't remember until I was older and more mature and could process things.
Okay.
It was always there in my subconscious. Like, let's go back to the Men in Black episode, the UFO above the house. Now, there was more happened than just that, but I didn't remember it until years later, until I was mature. And what happened was, while the UFO was down above the house, this blue beam of light came out of the UFO, surrounded me, and took me onto the craft. And while I was on there, these beings were talking to me and teaching me, and I really enjoyed being with them because they were beings that I'd seen my entire life. And they said to me, Marianne, you have to go back now. And I didn't want to come back because I loved being with them. And they said to me, you won't remember this visit. You won't remember this visit until you're older, and you need to remember it. And I didn't. I had completely forgotten it in my memory until I was older, and I can't even remember what brought it back. Oh, I think I was talking with somebody who was talking about blue beams of light that they had experienced, and then that brought back that memory for me.
I guess you wouldn't remember to even have asked, or I'm not even sure if you were able to ask anybody that had been in the car if they had missed you at that point.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
This is crazy.
Are you like conscious enough to know that when you come back, like, is like time changed drastically, or do you think time has slowed down when you're in these visits?
Time's a man-made construct. Out of this reality, there is no time. Time doesn't exist as we know it. So I could be gone for what seems like days to me, but I've only been gone minutes here.
He doesn't
Right.
understand that. I keep trying to tell him, but he doesn't wrap his head around it.
Look, I who've experienced it struggle still to wrap my head around it. Like when I would ask my star people, they would tell me things that were going to happen. I'd say, well, when is this going to happen? And they'll say, Marianne, we can't give you a time frame. We can give you signs to watch for, but we can't tell you when this will happen because they don't work on time. Time's only a human construct.
He's baffled. I'm looking at him to talk, but
Time is time to me. I don't know. I know it's 9 o'clock here, so it's probably like 2 o'clock by you, right? So time is time.
Yes, it is 2 p.m. here in New Zealand. Yeah.
Say, time.
2 p.m. tomorrow, so I'm from your future.
That's true. So that's
see, we're already time traveling.
that's
Now, can
mind
you wrap
blowing
your head
enough.
around that?
What is
Yeah,
tomorrow like?
I struggle with the time zones, so I can understand how people struggle with the concept that time doesn't exist out of here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So then, you've been taught, I guess, a lot from these beings.
A lot. And I recall being taught at different ages, and then right up until I was in my early 30s, I was still being taught stuff. And then I found myself teaching others. I don't know what I was teaching, don't ask me because I don't recall. I just remember being in the situation where I was speaking to these groups of people.
Now, have you ever considered getting yourself regressed to see, maybe what had happened, what did occur?
No, because I figure if I need to know it, I'll know it. If it's important for me to have that knowledge, it will be available for me.
You're so calm about it. I would have been all over that. I need to know.
Well, I guess for me is because I've grown up with it my entire life. So it's not like it suddenly just happened yesterday.
Right.
And it's only the one encounter. It's been my entire life. So it's as comfortable to me as breathing. It's just part of my reality.
So can I ask you something stupid?
You can ask me anything.
What is your blood type? Can you say?
I'm O positive.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. I've heard about the blood type thing. I don't know that I buy it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I only started learning about this recently, only because I'm Rh negative, so I just wanted to know.
Right. Yeah.
She's creepy with her research.
Yeah. Well, it fascinates me.
Yeah, it's interesting. So much to learn.
Have you ever thought, like, try to deep down and like think about the reason, like they chose you?
Oh,
Or do you have an innate understanding?
I have an innate understanding. I have an innate. Part of it is because I'm not afraid to speak up. And I never have been afraid to speak up about my experiences. Even when people said, "Oh, you're crazy, you're nuts, you're just seeking attention." No, I don't care. It's my reality. I always speak my truth.
Yeah, and those who want to understand will, and then those who don't.
Yeah, yeah. No skin off my nose. I'm not going to stop speaking my truth to please another person. That's one thing I've learned in my life is that one thing that one of my most beloved star people said to me, and it's something that I've tried to live with my entire life. And he said to me this. He said, "Marianne, when you do anything, you must do it from your heart. When you think from your heart. When you speak from your heart. When you act from your heart." And that really impressed me so much. And so it's something that I've always tried to live by my entire life. Because if you come from your heart space, then you'll always speak your truth. You know who you are.
Well, we're finding now that the head, the mind, and the heart are connected in more ways than we ever thought. That's fascinating.
Well, part of the thing is, in this reality, people are told, don't think with your heart, don't listen to your heart, listen to your head. So it's opposite of what we're taught here.
Right.
Things are changing though, which is good, but mostly we're told to think with our head, not with our heart. Don't think with your heart, don't follow your heart, for the most part.
It's all about gratitude and putting everything positive out there, I guess. Would you say?
It's about having empathy and understanding and compassion for others,
Yeah.
for every life form on this planet, for the planet itself.
Are you
Because
are you deep into meditation?
oh God, I try, but I can't meditate to save myself.
Really, you seem like somebody who would be great at it.
Oh gosh, no. I did try Vipassana meditation for a while, but no, it's not me. There are many ways you can meditate. You don't have to sit and go with your eyes shut. You can meditate when you're walking along a river. You can. I often find when I'm washing my dishes that I'm just not there. That's a form of meditation. You just still your mind. You don't have to be sitting in a quiet room to do it. You can do it anywhere.
Right. As long as you lose yourself and you become, I guess, nothing or no one.
Well, it's not becoming nothing. It's going inwards.
Right.
Like when I paint or when I sculpt or when I make soap, I'm so totally focused that I go into a different space entirely. And when I'm sculpting, I can lose hours just making a face. I can, and it's not until my back really starts hurting that I realize how long I've been doing it for.
That's crazy.
That's an example of time, actually.
Yep. That's the relativity.
That's the relativity. When you are enjoying something, time goes so quickly. You don't realize how long it's been.
Ironically, I do know that. I just made a post about that this morning.
Oh, well, there
So it's
you
ironic
go.
we're just talking about this. So have you been in contact more recently in these later years?
Not so much recently, but there's a reason for that. And back in the 80s, in 85 actually, they did tell me back then that their exact words were, and I remember them because it's so funny. He likes to use human terminology. Said, "Don't think you've been dropped like a hot potato. because we're going to be very busy over the next period of time. But that's not to say I haven't seen vehicles in the sky. I just haven't had any conscious face-to-face interaction for a while.
Ah, busy, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot going on that you're not aware of. They told me back in the 80s that the world governments had been told that they had to release the information of other realities, of other star people to humanity as a whole, or the choice would be taken out of their hands.
That kind of links something for me now. Now, are you aware of the Vatican having scientists come to them
Oh, yeah,
in their
yeah.
Do you think that that's what they were kind of working out?
There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that most aren't aware of. I'm not sure where to go with this. Probably it's
I
best
don't
if
want to
you
make you
ask me.
uncomfortable. You don't have to
No,
talk.
no, you're not.
Oh,
You're not
okay.
making me uncomfortable. It's just there's so much information, and I'm not sure what you want to know. Like, okay, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give you my knowing. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the situation. There are basically 3 lots of star beings. I'm talking 3 lots of groups of different species. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The group that I work with, that I've had encounters with my entire life, are multi-species group. I don't know how many are in it, but this group is benevolent towards humans. This group wants to help humanity to reach their potential. There's another group of star species who are neutral. They watch, they observe, they could care less about either side. We're just not important. They just watch us. The third group, and this is the group that your government made an agreement with, are not benevolent to humans. They do not have humans' best interests at heart, and they're actually quite malevolent. That's why so many people, particularly in the States, who have encounters, have very horrific and painful encounters with beings, because these beings don't care. They don't care about humans. They don't care if they cause humans pain. So there's these groups that are around. The current controllers of this reality are the group that your government has most dealings with. And they are the group that helped create humanity. Humanity is a created species.
The malevolent group is the ones that help.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. They created humanity as a slave species. And this is knowing that I've had my entire life. Humanity was created as an experiment, as a slave species, to do work for these beings who didn't want to do the physical work for themselves. However, the group that I work with came in, saw humanity, said, look, you have to let this species develop because they're sentient beings now, so you have to let them develop and find their way without controlling them. This planet is a fear-based planet. Everything about it is fear. One of the ways that they've kept humanity as slaves is that they instilled a fear button in us. So we have so many fears. We have fear of loss of job, fear of no food, fear of losing our homes, fear of war, fear of judgment from an angry God, fear of going to hell, fear of not being loved, fear of being alone, fear of being killed, fear of war, fear of famine, fear. This whole planet is based on fear. And that's because those who currently control this reality created it that way. Because if people live in fear, they're easy to control.
Do we look similar to what? Did they just create us and just give us like just some kind of seed, or do you think that we look similar to what they look like, or?
There's which species? There's so many different types of star people, but there are a basic humanoid species that they may have a head, a torso, two arms, two legs. But apart from that, they can look quite different. However, there are some who we look exactly like.
So in theory,
And
they
you,
could be walking around and we wouldn't even realize.
correct. That's the next point I was going to say to you. Yeah. Some you wouldn't even know. They could be standing next to you and you wouldn't know unless you could feel their energies, and then you'd feel the difference.
Do you think some of them are standing amongst us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like living amongst us? Like, do they have families and stuff? Or do you think they...
Oh,
I don't
no,
know,
they
like-
come and go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That rules you out.
Up. I always tell them I'm an alien, so... But you better be careful.
I like that. That's good.
It makes sense that I was going to say all your encounters seem strikingly good, where every encounter we hear about in the States is always like bad.
Yeah. Well, my beings I call them my beings, the ones that I work with have never, ever taken me against my will. I've always gone willingly. They've never done anything to me without my permission, without telling me what they were doing and why it was necessary to do it.
That seems fair.
So they wouldn't
Yeah.
be here either? Like, I mean, because our government has some kind of agreement with this other, I guess, alliance with this other alien species, we don't get the good ones here?
Not so much. Well, they're all over, but specifically not so much. I'm just trying to think.
Number one reason to
Think
leave the United States.
think about. Part of the agreement was that they would give your government access to technology. So how do you think we jumped from computers that took rooms and rooms to a little tiny microchip in a number of years?
Yeah, I've always thought that.
Yeah,
I've always
because that technology was given to them in exchange for a number of things.
Uh-oh. Do you know what the number of things are?
Part of it was being able to take people and use them for whatever nefarious purpose they had in mind. I don't know what their purposes are, but that was part of the agreement.
That's creepy. Well, I mean, couldn't they have done that even anyway?
Of course they could.
Yeah.
And they have been.
But knowingly. Yeah. No. Yeah. Oh, my God. It's so creepy.
Yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that most are not aware of.
When do you feel like they'll, I don't know, spill the tea, if you will?
Well, look, the past 3 years, the government has been drip all over the place, but most people just aren't even aware of it. And even during this COVID crisis, one of the guys in the States, and I cannot remember his name, he worked for this part of the military, came out and said that the US government has crafts that are not of this world. And yet it didn't make headlines around the world. People weren't jumping on it and saying, oh, well, if it's not of this world, then where can it possibly be? There was no reaction because people were too distracted by COVID.
I know. I was so blown away when I found that out. I mean, we immediately jumped on a podcast and did something about it, but like, I can't believe how minimal of an impact it made on society at all.
That's because they did it deliberately while people were distracted. And part of it is so when they do bring out star people into public eye, they can say, well, we told you about it back then.
And then part of me thinks that, I don't know if you've heard about false flags and stuff like that. Part of me thinks that once they do actually say it, even if it is true, it's just going to make us think that it isn't true. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a lot of propaganda that's put out. Why do you think that all these Hollywood movies come out all showing aliens as being negative? Very, very few of the movies that Hollywood brings out show star people in a positive light. It's to keep up the fear, so that when positive and benign beings do come, then people are going to struggle to accept them because they have this fear. So it takes people like me speaking out and other people to say that, hey, not all star people are good and have your best intentions at heart, but not all are malevolent either. So you have to use discernment. You have to understand that humanity is part of a greater society than just this little third rock from the sun.
Wonder why they chose Earth.
Minerals, because of the minerals on the planet.
Do you come from the belief that, I mean, if these star people are here, are they close? Do they live here? Do they live close? Are they on the moon?
I don't know where they hang out. I don't know where they hang out. I know that there are a lot of vehicles around, and because there's no time and distance, that their manner of traveling is quite different to even what a lot of the scientists are aware of. There are actually some beings, the ones I mentioned earlier, that don't even need vehicles to travel in. They're so far advanced, they just travel with the thought of mind, with their intent.
They travel, or is it more of like a hologram of them?
No. They
Wow.
they can move like that. Yeah.
Moving themselves, or you mean like their craft?
Themselves. They don't need a craft.
Huh. That'd be nice.
That would be amazing. I wonder
But-
if we all have that power.
Yeah.
No?
Not me. Maybe you. Like an alien.
Not me either. It'd be nice.
We only
She
use
does
such a
more than all
small-
of us. So
We only use such a small portion of our brain.
Yeah.
that was probably their intent too.
Yes, it absolutely was. Absolutely was. You know, I had, we probably don't know, but a couple of episodes ago, I interviewed on my podcast, Walking the Shadowlands, I interviewed a really, really interesting chap. And his name was Paul Wallace. And he wrote a book called Escaping from Eden. And this chap had been a minister for over 30 years, and he was heavily into biblical study. He studied at major universities in Italy and all over the world in biblical studies. And through his studies, he came to the conclusion that humanity was a created species by star people. Now, why did I get onto that? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere, but I can't remember where I was going.
I like where you were going.
It was really fascinating. So he, through his study, particularly of Genesis, of the book of Genesis, came to the conclusion that the Elohim talked about in the Bible was not a singular being, but it was a group of beings, and that there was a war in heavens between these groups of beings, one that wanted the best for humanity and one that didn't. And these are the beings that I've been talking about. So the war in heaven, that part of the Bible actually is correct. There was a war in heaven, and it's still ongoing to this day. And currently the battle is for humanity's freedom from those who currently control us.
See, now that gives whole new light to ancient aliens and what have you.
So there's a big thing going on. So this is a really interesting period in humanity's growth and development. There are, back in the 80s, when I last saw my favorite star person, he said to me that there had to be enough people who were spiritually, and by spiritually I mean questioning the current reality that surrounds us, questioning the reality, questioning the way we treat beings, other people, animals, the planet, questioning what we're taught, what we're told we have to believe. That there had to be a certain number of people awake spiritually before things could start to change dramatically, before humanity could become part of the greater intergalactic community and realize that they were not a species isolated by themselves. That was back in the 80s. That tipping point was reached about 18 months or 2 years ago. 18 months, 2 years ago. It was January, I remember, because I felt the energetic shift. And since then, we've seen an acceleration of people. The Me Too movement started. People really standing up for what's right and questioning the status quo and questioning the governments and what's being done and what isn't being done, and environmental issues. You can see that there's been a marked increase in this sort of thing. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And along with that, there's been an increase in your government releasing, drip feeding the ET UFO information out there.
Wonder what the ultimate goal behind that is. What do you think? They're just going to come out like holding hands with aliens and we're going to all know the truth? Or
so my understanding is that those who currently control this reality behind the scenes, and I'm not talking about the world governments, I'm talking about those who created humanity, those who currently control this reality, have people in all parts of governments throughout the world. And they control what they want humanity to think, feel, do, believe, blah, blah, blah. So these guys need to be removed. Those who currently control this reality need to be removed so humanity can be free to make their own decisions. See, we've never, ever, as a species, been free. We've never had true freedom, only the illusion, like with politics. You can vote for this party or you can vote for that party, but it's only an illusion of choice because basically they work for the same people. So at the moment, we only have illusion of freedom. What my team is working for is that humanity can have real freedom to make choices and decisions for ourselves as a race so that we can then develop without these controls that have been put on us. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Just want to see it happen faster.
Yeah, me too. But, hey, I've waited all these years. I can wait a few more, but it's coming. You can see it. You can see it. And like this virus, as real as it is, I personally believe was deliberately released because it's another method of control, because they can take away more freedoms that people have. I put a special podcast episode out called The End Game. If anybody would like to go to listen to it, and this is my knowing of what is currently happening in the world situation and why, which is basically what I've been telling you. But actually, it's my most listened to episode that I've ever released because people resonate with what I'm saying. And I always say to people, you don't have to believe a word that I'm saying. I'm just speaking my truth. You can take it or you can leave it. It's no skin off my nose. But I'm not going to stop talking anyway.
I love this. Do you think there's more than just, do you have like other people that have similar experiences as you do that know the things that you do?
I'm sure there are people out there that know the things that I do because I'm not the only one that's been taught. I don't actually mix with the UFO community. I never have. for a number of reasons. One is that they were infiltrated by the government years ago. So, I'm very cautious about groups that I interact with. I don't. I just keep myself to myself. Until I started doing this podcast, it was time for me to start talking out and reaching more people than just talking one-on-one, because it's time for people to wake up and realize what's happening, and it's time for people to take their power back, to wake up and realize that they have more, that there's more than what they're aware of, and that it's not a scary thing.
It's time to lift that veil.
It absolutely is. Yeah, absolutely is.
Now, can I ask you, if you don't mind me asking, where does that lead you spiritually? Like do you go towards a theological? I mean, you know too much, really.
Yeah, no, I don't follow any religion on this planet. Even spirituality, it's all a means to control people. Even spirituality, if you don't believe this, if you don't do that, then you're unenlightened and you're a new soul and you need to do this and you need to do that. If you don't go to church, if you don't repent, you're a sinner and you're going to go to hell, or, it's all, excuse me, bullshit.
Right.
The whole lot of it is bullshit.
Right.
So even spirituality, New Age, even that is used as a tool to control in here.
Really?
Well, yes, it is. Because if you don't follow what they feel, what they say, what you should feel, it's not overt, okay? It's not like if you don't believe you're going to go to hell, it's not like with some religions. But it's subtle, it's there, just the same. Even if it's restrictions you impose on yourself, like, oh, this says that I should be doing this to become enlightened, and I'm not, so therefore I'm lacking something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I do. I know exactly what you're saying. Well,
Yeah.
Do you follow your own? I mean, you follow your heart. You lead with your heart, so we know that. Do you think that there is like a recycling after this?
On this planet there is, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's a but it's not one you're going to like.
Oh, crap.
So, yes, reincarnation is a very real thing on this planet. And that's why I said earlier that they follow families through generations. So, like, they followed me through the many cycles of reincarnations I've had on this planet, teaching me every time, teaching me and preparing me until I was awake enough in myself that I could take and run with it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes. So what happens is, do you know how, and this is going to be quite controversial for some of your listeners, do you know how they always talk in all the movies and all the spirituality, everything you hear, when you die, go to the light, go to the light. The light is good. Light is positive. Light is love. Light is...
Yeah, I saw Poltergeist.
Yeah, go to the light, go to the light. Yeah, but, in all the movies, in everything, in all religions, in all spirituality, it's all about the light.
Right.
Light is good, dark is bad and evil and negative and nasty. Well, it's not. If you go into the light when you pass, it's a trap. Going into the light brings you back into this reality where you are forced back into the cycle of birth, death, in this prison planet. This planet is a prison, currently as it stands, because you have no true freedom of thought. You have no true... everything is so tightly controlled here. You only have the illusion of choice here on this planet.
Okay, so if you don't go into the light, where where could you go?
So what you'll see is darkness, and then you'll possibly see light in the distance. So just go into the darkness. There's nothing that can harm you. The darkness isn't evil. It isn't harmful. It doesn't contain beasts that are going to devour you. It's just a waiting place. And then when you're in the darkness, away from the light, then see what happens is that when you pass for a short period of time, you still have your memories of your life here, but here might not be where your soul came from. Oh, it's a bit more than I wanted to go into, actually. Okay, anyway, so just follow your heart. Okay, that's why it's really important that you listen to your heart. You listen to your heart.
Now you left us hanging.
So in the darkness, your heart knows where your home truly is. And your home might not be from this planet. So follow your heart. Your heart will lead you home. That's why it's so important. Why do you think they always say, listen to your head, not your heart? Here. So when you're out, avoid the light. Don't go into the light. Go into the darkness. Stay there. Be still and listen to your heart. And there you'll know where to go from there. Does that make any sense?
Makes perfect sense.
It will, I guess, at one point in my life.
Yeah.
The end point, anyway.
We'll let you know.
But I will say that the light is very appealing, and it's deliberately enticing, like a moth to a flame. And you may see beings that exude all this love and this light and this, all that stuff. But avoid them. Go to the dark, and then you can choose where you want to go. Then you have the choice. You can decide to follow your heart, or you can decide to go into the light. The choice is yours. If you go into the light, you'll be recycled. All your memories will be taken from you, and you'll be recycled back into this planet.
Easy enough.
I didn't know we had a choice. That's awesome.
You have a choice. Out of here, you have a choice.
I like that. At least we have a choice. That's something new we've never known. We've never thought of.
Well, most people don't know. And why would they? Because it's not taught here.
Yeah, because most people don't have your knowledge. That's awesome.
But I'm saying to your listeners, you don't have to believe a word that I'm saying. I'm just sharing my truth, my knowing. And what you do with it is your decision. Listen, I always say to people, even my Facebook group that I run, with any information that you hear, you must feel it out. Listen to it in your heart. How does this feel? How does this fit with you? How does this resonate? Does it feel right? Does it make you feel comfortable, good? Does it feel correct? Or does it make you feel uncomfortable, uneasy? Does it raise more questions than it answers? Does it feel wrong? So you need to start listening to your feelings and listen. Use that to listen to what I'm saying to you,
Yeah.
And if it resonates with you, then great. Take it, run with it. Do some more research. Question. If it doesn't, then just discard it. You've lost nothing but a few minutes of your time.
Consistently go with your gut.
Yeah.
Well, Marianne, this has been awakening and mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Okay, so I have my podcast called Walking the Shadowland, and it's on all free podcasting platforms and iHeartRadio, and it might even be on Amazon now. I have a Facebook page called Walking the Shadowlands, a Facebook group called Walking the Shadowlands, from which my podcast started. Actually, it started because my members asked me to create the podcast. I also have Instagram, Walking the Shadowlands.
And as always, you guys can find us at thebeerlatteshow.com and the Beer Latte Show on Instagram and Facebook, and Beer Latte on Twitter. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, this drip all on my body, soaking wet the sunny. Looking like a walking lick, yeah, you